The Adventure Time Distant Lands special Together Again was an afterlife-spanning adventure of countless callbacks and cameos, and began with one of the most delightfully audacious cold opens I have ever seen. Unlike the Distant Lands specials preceding it, Together Again kicks off with a classic original intro, and I had my eyes peeled in case there were any alterations or additions, but this is full on the original intro, save for the Distant Lands banner at the very end. And that, by itself, was quite the strange mood setter for me, because the episode had long been summarized as Finn and Jake's ultimate adventure that would be set well after the events of the series finale. Heck, the wording that was used when the news of Distant Lands first came out had me speculating that the special might take place after Finn and Jake had parted ways to pursue their individual lives. Don't get me started on the word choice of the most important adventure of their lives. Excuse me? Did you secretly mean the most important adventure of their deaths? Wow, am I just dazzled that the crew was able to keep the full scope of Together Again under wraps, so that when the realization of what the story will be about hits you, it hits like a ton of bricks. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let's back up a little. So once again, back to the original opening. On my first watch of Together Again, seeing this classic sequence of animation and hearing the theme made me expect that the special will start off back in time, or with a flashback, but the main plot is certainly not going to stay in the past. So the choice to have the establishing shot for the audience be this wave of intense nostalgia, it made me quizzical and gave me a sense of unease rather than comfort. Apparently I was picking up on the vibes of the creative sleight of hand that was going to blow my mind in about 7 minutes. Diegetic refers to when something is happening within the world of the story. For example, characters in a TV show often don't hear the background music the audience hears, which makes such background music non-diegetic. Well, generally, one would say that the Adventure Time opening would be non-diegetic in terms of visuals, because while the events we witness in the opening are snapshots in time across the land of Oo, this sequence is not actually happening in the world of Adventure Time whenever a new episode starts. The intro specifically for Together Again, on the other hand, is in this weird, funky little awesome limbo between diegetic and non-diegetic, because this classic opening was spurred on by the parasites that feast on the juicy mind bobas of newly deceased souls. I am not saying that Finn is literally recalling the intro, but rather the intense feelings of nostalgia we get from witnessing the intro is equivalent to what Finn would be feeling. As stand-ins, the audience and Finn are basically on the same level. The classic opening in Together Again can basically be seen as the initialization of the hallucination Finn is experiencing due to the parasites, and I think it was a really neat, retroactively fourth wall evoking storytelling technique. And then we get the first title card, with the cliff from the opening we had just witnessed seconds ago, but devoid of Finn and Jake, and with the landscape looking all withered and scraggly. That, of course, only further amplified the feeling of unease I was starting to develop. And looking at this title card in hindsight, the missing text here is totally representative that Finn forgot he died or was just altogether unaware that he died. Kinda wild how, despite forgetting that he was dead during the hallucination, Finn's desire to ascend to the 50th Dead World with Jake and eventually be reincarnated together manifested as this bucket of ice cream.
I say yeah! 50! 50!
A testament to the fortitude of Finn's willpower and mental dexterity, I suppose.
We're supposed to eat the 50-flavored ice cream together. Little bros forever.
The first half of the happy memory felt quite awkward to watch, deliberately so because memories are not accurate recreations of the past. Aside from Finn's voice not matching that of his younger self, the jokes weren't hitting quite right, the callbacks to things like auto-tune and mathematical catchphrases felt too closely crammed together.
Math. Classic Finn.
The vibe was just ever so off, as if somebody was attempting a spurious recreation of the ambiance Adventure Time had in its first couple of seasons. Of course, when the snow golems took form of Peacemaster and Uncle Gumbald, that should have solidified to everyone in the audience that this is not a legitimate flashback into the past, because obviously Finn had not yet met those characters around Season 2, which is when this memory seems to be derived from. I base that estimation primarily on Finn having the golden sword that was lost during the second season of the show. While Finn's memories are not trustworthy, I do think it's safe to say that some things from them are accurate, like LSP and Turtle Princess were probably actually growing closer off-screen during Season 2 of the show's original run, because by the time Adventure Time got to Season 4, LSP and Turtle Princess had become pretty close friends, as we saw in the episode titled Gotcha!
Hey girl! Hey girl!
Oh, Turtle Princess!
It would make sense if Turtle Princess's noble sacrifice attempt that we see in Together Again kickstarted or accelerated that friendship.
Please save LSP!
Yes.
She's beautiful and smart. She's got so much to live for.
Oh my god! It's true!
I need to take a moment to mention how the happy memory that surfaces in Postmortem Finn's mind is one that includes Ice King's classic princess napping shenanigans. Simon's return to the land of Oo left me with such weird conflicted feelings, because I was happy that the tortured dude regained control of his sanity and no longer had to live with the eternal diaper butt that is existing as Ice King, but the Ice King was his own distinct and special character that I also loved dearly, and I can't help but miss the wacky antics of that deranged magical troublemaker.
Help! Help! Somebody help me! Oh, sweet mama!
Apparently, Old Man Finn might share these same feelings, because he clearly has a soft spot of nostalgia for squashing Ice King's schemes. I think it's very bittersweet and touching that Finn's cherished happy memories include beefing with the Ice King. By the way, I just want it to be known that by Season 7, Finn devised the ultimate technique to destroy the Ice King's ice imprisonment attack.
Please, baby, don't say that.
Okay, now after the injection of that lighthearted material, I gotta mention the first moment in Together Again that made me audibly suck in my breath.
You did it, Finn! Everyone's alive!
My immediate reaction upon hearing that line of dialogue for the first time was, "Oh fuck, they did it! They killed him! Jake the dog is fucking dead!" I'd already resigned to the notion that Jake died many years before Finn. I talked about it at length in one of my previous videos, but this bit of foreshadowing was confirmation for me that Together Again is gonna go there. And I did start to lose my shit a little bit when Finn started crying.
You don't break up the team!
They just keep metaphorically punching you in the face over and over with reiterating that Jake is dead. Even that damn reference to the accursed writings titled Mind Games was not able to distract me from the incoming emotional pit of doom, although now that I have time to contemplate it, Jake saying,
I'm just slowing you down.
only for the book to plop into the shot, was an intriguing tacit admission from Finn's own psyche that some of the stuff Jake taught him might have not been the best for Finn. Jake's advice was by no means always perfect, after all, but what does it mean to have the book Jake grew to be ashamed of thrown into a hallucination about Finn's denial of Jake's death? Kinda implies to me that Finn's mind is pretty ill-adjusted about a lot of stuff regarding Jake, and may have festered a bit to a degree that is not healthy.
Deep down, I just kept waiting for the day I'd finally see you again.
Yeah, that'll be a topic we'll discuss more later. Right now, we gotta talk about the sweaty pain of Finn's crumbling hallucination.
Ouch!
Huh?
I really liked that spin on referencing the island's opening sequence to further highlight that Finn is experiencing a fake reality. And then, what reminds us more of death than skeletons? Are Dirt Beer Guy, Abracadaniel, Lemon Grab, Meow, Mr. Pig, and the Snail all dead? Well, Mr. Pig certainly is. I don't know about the others. And then Jake proceeds to crawl toward his own open grave before liquefying, and despite not knowing what's going on, Finn is aware that this is the second time he's feeling these emotions.
This isn't happening! Not now! Not again!
Oh, that line really gets me, and it's also so interesting emotionally from the audience perspective, because we're empathizing with Finn feeling a recreation of the original event, and he's purposefully dredging up the reality to break himself out of this happy memory hallucination induced by the parasite. Like, Finn has a near sense of relief when removing the parasite, and he comments on the memories as if they were kind of fun.
Pretty convincing hallucination. I really thought I was young again, and the Jake was still alive, and we were Björking it up like old times.
So that pain and sense of loss we just witnessed, we were witnessing it on Finn's own terms in a way. Finn's psyche manifested Jake's death as a defense mechanism. Jake's death anchors Finn to reality, and lets him break away from the illusory. This demonstrates that Finn has accepted Jake's death, which is why he is able to chuckle about the happy memories right after breaking free of the parasite, but the hallucination also simultaneously demonstrates that Jake's death remains an exceptionally traumatic event for Finn. Finn found ways to move on and live out the rest of his life, but I got the impression that the loss of his brother remained a tender and raw subject that Finn couldn't quite face directly. Like, I don't feel comfortable trying to guess how Jake may have died based on what we saw in the hallucination, because to me the visuals did not feel particularly symbolic. The way Jake's death was represented felt very abstracted, detached, and kinda reductive. It's as if Finn locked up all the details of the day Jake died in his vault, so he doesn't have to recall them.
Oh yeah, the vault. That's where the stuff I can't handle goes. Kerplunk.
And what surfaced in the hallucination was a manifestation of the raw emotional aftermath of Jake's death, rather than a vague simulacrum of the event itself. It should go without saying that this is all highly open to interpretation. I'm just sharing my reading of it, and I hope you share your own opinions in the comments. As the audience, it would have been quite easy for us to get really bogged down and saddened by the reveal that Jake died, but instead of giving us time to linger on it, the episode quickly compounds on itself with new eyebrow-raising developments. We go from, oh fuck, Jake is dead, to holy cow, Finn is actually an old wrinkly dude, to asking where is Finn anyway, and what's up with these returning characters, and then that dawning realization that, oh, Finn is also dead. I loved Finn's delayed reaction to his surroundings, which gave the audience plenty of time to recognize those familiar Gates, Guardian, and skeletons from the episode Death in Bloom before Finn himself actually did, which resulted in this absolutely delightful instance of dramatic irony that, to me, felt almost like an eternity the first time I watched this special.
Oh.
I think it was such an interesting and bold creative choice to quickly segue us through the pain and trauma Finn experienced from losing Jake in a way that's detached, yet still extremely meaningful, before hitting us with the cheeky twist that actually both main characters of Adventure Time are now deceased. The first 10 minutes of Together Again were a wacky fast tracking of the grieving process, and I'm just in awe that such a concept was pulled off so spectacularly. Adventure Time often subverts the macabre in intriguing ways, and this is going even further beyond. The realization that Finn is dead recontextualizes so many of the emotions the viewer is grappling with and inverts them. Death drove Finn and Jake apart, yet now death is also going to be the thing that brings them back together. When the second title card dropped, I literally started clapping from the roller coaster of so many different emotions. This introductory sequence just blew me away. It felt so weird to be grinning from Finn kicking the bucket, but Finn's own reaction to being dead was just the most wholesome thing ever.
That means I get to see Jake again.
Finn's unbridled joy at the thought of reuniting with his baby bro is infectious, and made me hopeful for their reunion rather than mournful over their deaths.
Jake, 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 Jake!
Cause of death?
Who gives a toot?
Hey!
And just like during his first visit here, Finn skips the line and gets into the land of the dead with no regard for protocol. This of course leaves the deaths of both Finn and Jake a complete mystery, and I don't know if I'm in the minority opinion or not, but I prefer it that way. It's just more fun and captivating as a total unknown for me. By the way, just so y'all know, I'm not gonna be mentioning every minor returning character. It would just be too distracting for this review. Plus, it's just faster to check out the wiki anyway, even though nobody made a page for Bushi for some reason. So on my first watch, I thought Finn mistaking the furry mound on the hilltop for Jake might be due to his elated emotional state, or him still using old man eyeballs, but this was actually an indirect callback to what we learned about Finn in the episode Red Starved. Most of the audience probably recognized immediately that it wasn't Jake due to the umber color, but if you consider the fact that Finn has red-green color blindness, his misidentification makes a lot more sense. Here's a simulated image that approximates how the fur color of Jake and Mr. Fox might be perceived for those with deuteranopia, and they are indeed fairly similar. I am convinced this was a deliberately chosen detail, but even if it was just a lucky coincidence, I still think it's very neat. Can I just say I love Mr. Fox, by the way? I consider him iconic.
You see that depression? You can't buy that. You gotta earn it.
I was so psyched merely for a brief appearance from Mr. Fox. I was not ready for the role he would take on later in the climax. Mr. Fox drops some exposition on us, and we learn that projection and perception are key aspects of the dead worlds, and that souls can alter their appearance in a myriad of ways, including transforming into what they looked like in their past lives. Finn takes this information for a spin by channeling the knowledge that he gained from playing Regression Simulator on BMO, and goes through a transformation sequence in the opposite order that he recalled his past lives back in the episode The Vault. Finn settles on the appearance he had right as the original run of Adventure Time ended, and...
This is what you're going with, huh?
Yeah, it's recognizable.
Yeah, this was extremely meta, but it's fine, I suppose. I was a bit bummed that our time spent with Old Man Finn was so damn brief. I would have loved an entire adventure with elderly Finn, or Finn gradually getting younger and younger all the way back to his athletic prime as the special goes on, rather than committing to his recognizable look right away. But ultimately...
It's fine. It's fine.
Speaking of looks, putting this design of Finn on the promotional poster was such a fun, sneaky way to hide spoilers for the premise of Together Again, while still signaling to us that the Finn Mertens we will see in Distant Lands won't be the exact Finn we left off with at the end of the series proper.
Look at that young meat.
Whoa, you're right. I'm toit?
But, just like I would have preferred for Finn to remain visually older, I would have also preferred for Finn to keep this outfit for the majority of Together Again. This special is extremely sentimental though, so I understand reverting to the old outfit for those sentimental purposes, and like I said before...
It's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
Maybe it is fine.
Back in my speculative video shortly after news of Distant Lands first came out, I was really quizzical about the implication that Finn got more arm meat shaved off so soon after the series finale. A few people in the comments pointed out that Finn's new prosthesis could simply slide up over his arm, and I was like, oh duh, that's so flippin' obvious, why did I jump to my assumption? Well, it turns out Finn actually did lose the entirety of his right arm at some point in his life after the events of Obsidian. You can clearly see the aftermath of the secondary arm incident when Finn transforms into his skeletal form. But let's curtail the discussion of appearances for now. Mr. Fox himself was probably going to explain the mechanics of the afterlife in way more detail, but he got interrupted, which leaves us to make our own assumptions and headcanons.
Anyway, your spiritual style and past life quotient usually... What are you doing?
I found the clapping gag extremely funny, and that's even before considering that it's an amusing callback to something Jake came up with back in the episode James Baxter the Horse.
Finn, when we wake up in the 9th dead world, promise me you'll listen for this sound.
What?
Just that there's a lot of dead people there, we might get separated. I'll be the one going...
I've got no idea why Jake thought they would go to the 9th dead world or what that's all about, but it is interesting that Finn was assigned to the 37th, which is actually the same exact dead world that Jake went to back when he died in the episode Sons of Mars. We don't know why Finn got suddenly reassigned, or where to. Maybe New Death decommissioned the 37th dead world? But this is all irrelevant to Finn anyway, because he wants to be taken directly to Jake. And this is how Tiffany comes into the picture. I was so psyched to see this dude again, even if he is a cop.
Yeah, a cool cop.
Gotta say, Tiffs, the vibe you Undertakers give off is closer to that of scene kids loitering around the mall. I shouldn't be too mean to Tiffany, though. New Death already roasts the shit out of him.
Way to guard the castle, mullet! Cram it, Dirt Stash!
Can I just point out that when Tiffany is strolling up to Finn, Finn presumes he's gonna get stabbed.
Is that guy gonna stab me?
Yet instead of having a countermeasure, Finn just decides to take the stabbing. Like, Finn just commits to taking the hit? What kind of fighting style does Old Man Finn use? But yeah, one of Finn's projected reactions to seeing Tiffany being this happy face was quite sweet, as was Tiffany wanting to hang out with Finn in his studio. But instead of relying on the power of words, Finn chooses violence.
Oh, geez.
Old Man Finn was a bunny slayer.
So my primary reaction upon seeing New Death for the very first time was, holy cow, look at those 24-inch chain link pythons! Also, if you've seen the Adventure Time short, The Gift That Reaps Giving, where we found out that Death was dating Life, I'd venture that you too guessed that this must have been their child before the flashback divulged that OD was indeed ND's dad. On a related tangent, the voice actor for Old Death, Miguel Ferrer, died in 2017, and I thought it was a really cool gesture to not recast his voice, but rather simply give Death a couple of silent appearances in the special. Unless you count the giggling fruit from the death tree, that is.
Hey, don't touch anything.
By the way, at the moment, I have no idea what the deal with the OD tree is, besides it just being a conceptually interesting aftermath to a deity's demise, but if any of you have fun thoughts on the subject, do share them in the comments. Back to New Death. His scythe made me think back to the escalator leading to the gates of the underworld because it looked like it had been sliced in twain, and back in the episode Death in Bloom, it was still functional. So yeah, I presume New Death was responsible for its destruction. Maybe there was intent behind that act, but I can also see ND laying waste to things just for the sake of rampaging.
I'm all jacked up on destruction!
New Death's first line of dialogue was whispering to his right hand and then giving it a smooch.
Thank you for all this time you gave me. You're my best friend the entire world.
Which on my first watch I was like, is this a thinly veiled masturbation joke that his own best friend is his right hand? What a way to set up a character. Of course, it only gets more twisted when we find out what the reality of that was. This was some excellent foreshadowing that really works on a symbolic level as well.
Oh, it's gonna be sick.
I also chuckled at how New Death chugs down tons of these drinks, which are labeled as boba for dudes, which harks to notions of fragile masculinity and the weird gendering of products in order to market to target individuals that feel emasculated by stuff like brushing your teeth, or eating Pocky, or drinking boba beverages. This dude is running on pure vibes, and those vibes are anger and insecurity. For the most part, New Death is, by design, a flat villain with a one-note personality. But his aimless frustration, ignorance, and empty rebellion work well for the purposes of the plot, wherein New Death is but a puppet strung along by a far more deliberately malicious entity. And while New Death's personality is pretty basic, I do consider ND a fairly interesting character purely on the basis of lineage alone. Even the Lich makes reference to New Death's lack of place in the universe.
The spawn of life and death is a creature without purpose, fit only to be a pawn in my eternal quest to end all life.
It feels like there could have been a rich mythology behind life and death trying to raise a child while balancing their own cosmic duties, with that child ending up lost and lacking a sense of belonging, but there was not much room in this jam-packed special to squeeze out further background detail on how New Death grew up, nor does that interplay thematically with Finn and Jake, who are obviously the focus of the special, so I understand the decision to have New Death be a superficial villain that packs a fun, heavily foreshadowed twist as to who the real big bad was. There was some nuance in how New Death lingers on the thought of his dad, particularly when it comes to the background music used, and I did get the impression that New Death knew his dad loved him, but ultimately ND has a lack of regret for his actions, so Finn invoking Old Death's name falls on dead ears.
You gotta help me out. I'm buds with Old Death. We hung out that one time.
While this might seem like yet another callback to Death and Bloom, I think Finn is actually referring to the time he and Jake went bushing in the short The Gift That Reaps Giving.
Hey, Finn!
What's up, man?
You gotta try this thing, it's called bushing!
This seems pretty boring.
Old Death was, of course, trying to secretly kill a child so he could steal their cassette tape and give it to his boo as a present, but Finn and Jake never found that out. So yeah, anyway, Finn turns to violence again, but fails to remember that one does not simply kick death. I like to think that little gasp is Finn recalling the last time this happened to him.
What happened?
You can't kick me because your brain is stupid.
I consider this confirmation that Finn remained stupid forever till the day he died.
Let's never be stupid again.
Wait! Let's always be stupid! Forever!
So did Tiffany, for that matter, because Tiffany fell twice for Finn's backhanded schemes.
I do understand.
Then you understand why I have to do this!
Old Man Finn is an incurable prankster backed by justified violence, and I am here for it.
Sorry again!
Hey everyone, it's been a while. I assume you've noticed this video is titled Part 1. I really did not want to split this video up into multiple parts, but my mental health has remained garbage. I can't recall the last time I felt like I wanted to exist, and I haven't been able to do anything remotely creative. Depression has just ravaged away another year of my life. Like in my first playthrough of Elden Ring, I had no hesitation going for the Frenzied Flame ending, because immolating the entire planet was something I could vibe with. Anyway, I've been sitting on this chunk of the review for quite some time. The first 10 minutes or so were recorded within a couple days of Together Again premiering, so all that excitement you hear in my voice is very much genuine excitement. I think I recorded the rest a couple weeks later. I have no intent to stop making YouTube videos, it's just that with where I've been mental health-wise, I have no idea when you can expect more. And thus, the decision to release this chunk of the review as Part 1 instead of keeping it locked away indefinitely. And that's about it, I guess. Thank you to all the people who are still supporting me over on Patreon. I paused my Patreon for months where I don't release videos, and by this point my Patreon has been paused longer than it's been active. But nonetheless, I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again sooner than later.